like you're a very easy person to talk to. Like if I'm talking to you, I know you're listening.
Thank you.
I know for a fact like you're taking in what I'm saying. Your brain isn't anywhere else. You're not thinking about anything else when I'm talking to you. Right now, you're thinking about something else. Right?
She was laughing. So she's laughing because she doesn't believe I'm the best listener. And so I'm saying thank you because it's good to hear that because, like I said, well, I don't know if I said this now or prior to, but we've been working on communicating. And I said, you guys set the best example. I don't know if y'all know that y'all are doing this. And when I'm watching y'all's podcast, I'm like, y'all are flowing, and I'm sure y'all talked about the things that you're going to talk about. But as far as like God is in the podcast with you guys, because sometimes you'll hear at the end of the podcast, like, wow, this was so good for me. Like, and I'm like, did y'all not talk about this?
Hello, you are listening to the Higher View podcast. This is season 2, episode 46. Messed that up last time. I said episode 2, but we're actually on 46. But we are here with some very good friends of ours, Caleb and Kalisa.
Hello.
What's up, baby?
Hello.
Caleb and Kalisa, we have known them for... How long have we known you guys?
At least
2 years?
2 years.
2 years, yeah. We've known them for about 2 years. They go to the same church that we do as well. Like brothers and sisters, we all get along very well. Very relatable in our stories and just the things that we've gone through. So we invited them here, and thank you guys so much for taking it very last minute, because I know this is super last minute.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we have a plan that we need to get together about like who's gonna be on here, because it's kind of like scattered. But it was super last minute, so thank you guys for just taking this last minute. I know it's a little different, since it's y'all's first time doing something like this. Yeah. It's a little different.
I was like, we need to schedule the people we want on and not just text them a week before and be like, hey, are you available this weekend? Like, So we appreciate you guys coming last minute for sure.
We want to be more organized.
Yeah.
We want to be more organized at this. But this is Caleb and Kalisa. We just thought that they have a really cool story to tell and a testimony to share. And like I said, very relatable to me and Lex. They share similar stories. So we just thought that maybe we could go into a little bit of background on how you guys got to where you are and why you guys are where you are and what got you guys here. So whoever, I'll just ask first, Caleb. I know we have similar backgrounds with like growing up in church.
Yeah.
So what kind of church was it that you grew up in, and were you like born into that church?
So we started going to church when I was younger, as in like 3, 4-ish. Mm-hmm. And the church background that we were in was purely Pentecostal, speaking in tongues, seeing people get laid out during service. Yeah. So witnessing was a huge part of my testimony and the reason why I'm where I'm at today.
Okay. Yeah. So you grew up in church, and Kalisa, I think you were the one that didn't grow up in church, if I remember, right?
So I did grow up in church, but I did not receive anything really growing up. Yeah. So I was raised in a Seventh-day Adventist.
What is that?
So, sorry, I've never heard of that. So there are a lot of same beliefs, obviously, like as a Christian, but it's more Old Testament. Gotcha. And church was on Saturdays. And so even more so, like as a kid, like Saturday morning, never wanted to go. And and so it was more of like a chore having to go to church growing up. And then once I met Caleb, and he was like stronger in faith, and
thank you.
He basically allowed me to encounter God more. And so I ended up going to Bible school with him.
What? You guys went to Bible school? Wait a minute. We've had this conversation.
We went to TBI.
Yes, I went to TBI. I remember we were there at the same time.
Yeah.
I remember you mentioned that.
This isn't the first time we've had this type of conversation with other people, though, where people are like, yo, we went to TBI, or we went to the camp there. And so we grew up going to the camp and stuff. But when we met, my walk with God was non-existent. It was more like a run away from God. And so, but there was certain points in our lives that just felt important to go to church, or certain pullings on our heart where like we need to get in church. And so we would go to church or visit my old church, and things weren't sparking like they used to spark. And so like we ended up having to find something for ourselves. And that's where our walk of God like kind of led us. But it was more so like we were living out in the world, going and partying, doing this and that, going to festivals and concerts, and involving our energy into something that wasn't God, but we were searching for something to feel something. And so it wasn't until like 3.5 years ago until we first stepped foot into the house.
Wow.
And that was like
the house was y'all's first church together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then like we went to a few before that, like no instrument type of churches. Like we were just like stepping into churches like, oh, we passed by, they have a full parking lot, like why not, you know? And we ended up going to like maybe 3 or 4 churches prior before we ended up going to the house. And so
That sounds just like us.
It's literally just like us.
So we tried like Gateway. We tried this one church that was super small. You remember? It was just like
there was like 15 people.
like if even 15 people.
And they didn't have their own building. It was like
it was super sporadic. He just let the Holy Spirit move.
It was interesting. It was really cool. It was cool. It was a cool atmosphere, cool community.
But it wasn't like our generation where we can grow and have community, which is so important.
Yeah. So I know the TBI thing. So did you guys go to TBI on your own, or was that like something that you guys just decided to do?
My youth pastor went, and we grew up going to camp there. I can't remember the camp's name. Help me.
So it's not TBI that I went to. I went to
Discovery
the
camp.
Discovery
camp.
Yeah. So
The slide, the riding horses, the go-karts.
He remembers that.
I think I went to the New You. You went to the New You.
I don't know.
Like the album cover of it's like or like the picture cover is like orange, and there's like this dude with swooped hair and glasses.
You really remember?
I remember exactly. Like, so I run into
Sounds
people
familiar.
that went to camp there, and they're like, "Yo, we went at the same time."
That's
and
crazy.
I had someone like 2 weeks ago. We met through work, and he was talking to me about God and stuff. I'm like, dude, like I don't ever meet people out in the world that just is passionate about talking about the things of God, let alone talking about God at all. And so he was talking about it, and we've developed this friendship. He's older. He's wiser. How about that? And so
Good
we've been talking, and he gives me a call, and we'll just sit here and talk about God and talk about our walk with God. And I feel like he feeds off of me, and I definitely feed off of him and his wisdom. And so we've been friends for like 3 weeks, and I've known his son for over a year. And he got into a phone call with my dad. I'm trying to like connect them and network them. He's wanting a new job, and so he called my dad, and he just started talking about his kids, and I guess they were complimenting me, and my dad's like talking about my walk with TBI and Kalisa going to TBI. And he's like, "You said what?" And he's like, "Yeah, a small little college out in Columbus, Texas." And he's like, "Dude, my daughter went there, and she like worked there after she left." And so like it's such a small world, especially my mom calls it kingdom connections. We're making kingdom connections, you know, like within the church community, as much as we're a huge, large body, and everybody, Pentecostals, Trinitarians, all these different types of ways of living and learning, Seventh-day Adventists, we still are a small community, and we all have like some similar pathways with each other, which is super cool.
It's crazy.
And so anytime someone's like, "Yo, you know, I used to be there too," and like in my head, like that tells me like, we need to be friends. You know, God didn't make this happen by accident.
Not coincidence.
We have the same breeding grounds, the same soil into us, and so definitely.
That's awesome.
That was
dude.
poetic.
I know. I remember being at Discovery Camp. And it was such a memorable time. Me and my brother went with the church that we were going to in Odessa, and I just remember like being in the sanctuary, like the big sanctuary. There's just so many kids in there. I couldn't even like tell you like any experiences that I had. Like, I don't even know if I really experienced God in a place like that. I can't remember. I just remember being in a sanctuary full of kids, and it was fun. Like, I remember me and my brother, we would sit in the big sanctuary, and we would listen to the pastor as he's speaking, and we're just messing around. But like, he says something like that sounds like relatively good. We're like, like trying to get the crowd to clap, you know? Trying to get them to follow our clap. And we did it like so many times, and then I was with Josh, my uncle. He was actually like the youth pastor at that time.
Oh, wow.
And he turned around like to me and Romy. He's like, "I know what y'all are doing. Stop." But that was fun. It was a really good time there. But that's really cool. You said the church that you went to, what was it called?
It was Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay, that's the first time I've ever heard.
It was called Grace Temple.
Okay.
But Yeah, I think for me going to TBI, honestly, we were living such a worldly way and we were craving something that the world was not fulfilling us. And I did not go to TBI to like experience God, honestly. I was just following him because I didn't want to be away from him.
For sure. Yeah.
But
How old were y'all?
18.
18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I've said since I've left TBI, even if I did not receive everything, then I think that was the breakthrough. That was the start of a change in my life. And I'm so thankful. Even if it was just to follow him, I was able to receive so much more. And then after like graduating TBI, we came back and I do feel like we were in a better place, but we hopped back into living worldly again.
I would like to say, just stop her real quick. TBI saved our lives, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Prior to going to TBI, yes, if it was my decision, and so I knew some people that had went, my youth pastor, other people that has went, and so it was always on my heart. And when I was younger, I was like, I'm going to go to the college there. And then the older I got, I didn't want anything to do with the things of God, the church of God, the people, nothing. And so I started having these really vivid dreams prior to. And this was in a time where we were doing drugs, partying. It didn't matter what drug it was. It was like, you know, anything was a new way to feel. And so
trying to feel something.
Exactly. And so like I had no limits when it came to it. And then Kalisa, God bless her soul, she was there right there with me. And so I started having these dreams. I wasn't in church. I wasn't looking for God. I started having these dreams of my death and all these different weird, crazy type of ways. And I know y'all spoke about dreams in one of y'all's podcasts. And so it was so scary. So the two people that I wanted to reach out to were people in my spiritual walk. One, I'm going to name him Jody Rogers. This is someone that is attributed to my walk with God, my faith in God. He's a man of God, you know, someone like if you look at like a man of God, you're like, oh, I want my family to look like that. I want my kids to behave like that. This is that man. Yeah. And so he's always been my role model as far as following God. And so I started having these dreams. I'm letting her know, I'm like, yo, this is scary. Like I'm waking up feeling like I just left from where I was at. And so I called Jody and I was like, hey, pastor, like, please tell me what's going on with me. I was like, I don't have enough spiritual discernment for myself to tell me. Please tell me. And so I talked to him and I told him, I was like, man, I had a dream of me dying. I don't know what's going on. I can't see past tomorrow. Even when like in my day to day, when I'm awake, I couldn't visualize what was going to go down tomorrow. I couldn't visualize a week from now. And so everything was dead in me. My vision was dead. I was dead internally. And so he was like, call Branham, which is his son, my best friend growing up. And so I called him and keep in mind, I haven't had much relationship with anybody from church in a very long time. And I was like, hey, Branham, this is what's going on. Dad, Jody, I call him Dad. I was like, Dad told me to reach out to you. And this is the situation. These are my dreams. And he said, I had a dream of you dying too. Wow. He said, I was at your funeral. No way. Yeah, he was like, I was at your funeral and just start speaking. And I'm getting chills talking about it right now. It spooked me. It really spooked me because I know they hear from God and I experience the things of God through this family. And so I picked up everything that we're doing and I went to college. Wow. They're like, semester starts here and we need you to do this, this, and that as far as get your life right. Try to clean yourself up. And I did the best that I could. And so when we went into that, TBI was definitely a life reserve. When I was there, I didn't feel like I was receiving. When I was there, I didn't want to be involved. The people remind me a lot of the people that are at our church right now, full of joy. Everybody has a testimony to share. Everybody has a walk with God. It's something that they're happy about. I hated it. Everybody that was at DBI, I was like, y'all are fake. Why are y'all so happy? I don't know what are y'all going. Like there was something so dead inside of me that just hated the things of God, and which is crazy to say that now because I love the things of God. And so, TBI was definitely a life reserve. It was a lifeboat sent to save us.
TBI, for the listeners that don't know what TBI is Texas Bible Institute?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I thought that was...
They're no longer around.
Right. They're not around.
Purely online.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
As of 2 years ago.
Wow. Well, I think that's really cool, the dream part. Because, we've talked about dreams before on here. And dreams definitely have significant meaning to your lives. I've read a book about dreams, and one of the things that it said is that dreams is your subconscious telling your conscious self truth about yourself. Right. Or and it could even be prophetic, like telling you what's about to happen. So that could have been your message, I
was 100% convinced that if I didn't do, because I asked for advice from, my pastor, and I said, you know, what do you advise me to do? And he was like, remove yourself, and put yourself in a different environment. And so it was completely different environment because what was going on around us in Arlington at home, wasn't going on at TBI. You know, you had a couple of misfits where people were still trying to get away with certain things. But as far as like what we were involved in, was heavily satanic, and we didn't know. It was heavily demonic. The spirits that are around us, the friends that we kept around us, the environments we placed ourselves in 100% of the time was completely withdrawing from us. And so when I asked him like, hey, you know, like, what should we do? And he's like, go here, you know? And I was like, I was willing to do whatever, because in my head, I was like, if I continue to do another drug, if I continue to do this or that, my life is over. Yeah. But like she said, when we came back from TBI, we eased our way back into those things. But in the corner of our mind, we're like, okay, I can't take it this far. You know, I can't go as far as I used to go. And so we were almost playing with the devil at that sense in time. And so we went through like maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years of that before we ended up like saying, all right, enough is enough. Like, this is crazy. What we're going through. Like, we're about to kill each other. We're about to kill ourselves. Like, all different types of things were going on in our life at that point where we're like, we need to throw ourselves back at God in whatever way that we can. And I think she was actually going to church on her own at one point.
I was like pick and choosing.
She was trying to find.
Just trying to feel the connection that I did feel at TBI a couple times. But yeah, and then I saw someone post the house and I was like, oh, let's just try it. Wow. First time we went, we walked out and we are like, this is home. Like, we'll be back.
Yeah. I feel like,
sounds like us.
I feel like, you know, literally. We growing up Pentecostal, you know, we look for what's spiritual. You know, growing up Pentecostal, you're like, this ain't God. Every time, like, she would say some things about God, I'm like, oh, no.
We definitely disagreed on a lot. Like, we bumped heads, which was hard because, like, we're both trying to find our path with God, but we're not agreeing. And it's like, how can we come as one? And it took us, you know, actually having to listen to each other and read the Bible, show up to church, and actually experience to know. Because a lot of things, like, I resented him for how he believed it. Like, it drove me crazy. I was like, you don't know the Bible, even though he grew up more, like, as a Christian than me. I was like, no, you're wrong. Like, okay.
I just thought we were going to hell. With every situation that we were going through, I really thought, I was convinced that these actions are sending us to hell. Yeah. What we're doing, what we're living in. I was like, there's no way we're getting into heaven. I was like, there's absolutely no way. Like, we need to change. And so
like, I'm trying to get my ticket.
Exactly.
I think it's so cool earlier what you were saying, like, you like being around the atmosphere, people being like filled with joy, and you were in the atmosphere, but you were just like so dead inside that you're like, I don't want to be around. Like, why are y'all so happy? Like, y'all are fake. Like, I feel like that is so relatable for so many people out there. So many people that are like, they look at our life and people that I know, and they're just like, how are you so, you know, joyful? Like, I don't get it. And it might rub them off the wrong way. And you can feel it too. Like, in the spiritual realm, like, you can feel the warfare. You can feel the friction. Even like being in the same room with them, it's just this friction. And it's just like, you feel like you're doing something wrong, but it's just because they don't understand the joy that is on your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the truth is always an offensive message. Like, nobody wants to know how they're doing anything wrong. Yeah. Nobody wants to get put in that. Nobody wants the truth put in their face about themselves. Right. You know, so when you're walking in truth, when you're walking in your own self, and you have confidence of like who you actually are, and you have a foundation on top of that, people are like, this dude's weird. Like, why is he not worrying? Why is he not like dramatic? Why is he not complaining about life? Like, you're the weird one now for actually being.
I feel convicted, but I accept it. You know, I accept my new walk. I accept my new joy, because I was so consumed. I used to deal with suicidal thoughts, depression, heavy chronic depression. I never accepted the way that I looked. And for the first time, I accept who I see. I accept who I am. So if that means I'm overjoyous, or like, so like when people are at church and they're coming through the parking lot, and you can see who's new, you can see who's dragging in, and you can see who's not feeling it. I am that joy for them. And then like, if they're thinking like, oh my gosh, this guy's fake, I take it. I'll accept it, because I'm not. What's in me is so much better than what I used to be. I used to be so dead inside, and so now I have something in me. I have something to hold on to, and I'm happy. I know where we've come from, you know. And so when you stand on that, you almost like, you want to protect it, you want to guard it. You're like, oh my gosh, this is mine. This is my happiness, and I'm not going to let your deadness kind of affect that and phase that. And so like, now that I see the way that I am now, I'm not perfect by any means. I'm not where I am. Like I hear you guys say all the time, this is my healing journey. You know, I am healed, but this is my healing journey. I'm going forward and I'm pushing forward. There's new things to learn and new things to experience. But as of right now, I'm like safeguarding my happiness. And so like, I don't let anybody like try to disturb that. It happens. I'm human, but I try to like, for the best of my ability, I'm like, okay, you're not going to get me out of my character. You're not going to get me feeling like I used to be. And so
that really spoke to me what you just said right there, because I don't know, sometimes I wear my heart on my sleeve and I like care for others so much, but I love that you said you guard and you protect what you have with God.
Yeah.
That's so important, because people out there are bleeding everywhere. They're bleeding with their emotions and their depression or their sadness. But it's like, how can we be strong for them? Like protect what we have and not let that affect us, but we can still be there for them, if that makes sense. But I wanted to ask you, like, where, if you can remember, like, where was your turnaround? Like from having those suicidal thoughts to the depression, like did you just wake up one day and it was gone?
Mm-mm.
Or like, what was your process?
The House Fort Worth Young Adults Night.
Whoop, whoop.
I remember this like so vividly. And when it goes back to the safeguarding my happiness and my peace, that means like my mental peace. That means like if I don't ever have to go through another suicidal thought or another day of depression, I'm going to safeguard that. And so
For sure.
that's really
Absolutely.
important to me, to the extent of like you said, remembering where you got it at. And so anytime I get to talk about this, God freed me of, I get to say where. And it was in church. I remember really vividly the moments that led up were the worst of the worst. And it wasn't just suicidal thoughts. It was the action of following through. I've been there too many points of life where I really wanted to die. I really wanted to kill myself. And I was like going to put initiative into it. And it's like something always backed me out. And something always like came across my mind in that moment. You're like, okay, like, no, like, I don't know. Sorry, mom, if you're hearing this. Like, but God has freed me of that. And so like, I feel like I have a position to stand on it and talk about it. But at the same time too, I feel like the more I talk about it, the more I'm putting myself out there. I'm like, you know, but, House Young Adults one night, Pastor Kenneth, he like just said, you know, he was going out of character. I don't even know if this was the message. He stepped up on stage and he's like, I feel the spirit of anxiety and depression in this room so thick. And
I remember that night.
And like I was on the front row and I always have my notebook and my Bible. And like when he was calling it out, I was like, dude, like the moments leading up to that evening, that week, I went through something really, really deep and something I put myself through. And so when he talked about it, I was like, you're talking to me. But when it happened that week, I thought I was done with depression. I thought I was done with suicide. So at the moment it rose up, I was like, okay, this is over. Like, you know, I'm tired of dealing with this. It's never going to go away. And like, I was just so done at that point. And so that evening, I almost didn't go to church. And I was like, okay, I need to go. I need to put myself there. And so, I showed up and he did the altar call and I was standing on the front row. Before he ever said, raise your hands and stand up, I stood up with both books in my hand, my notebook and my Bible, and I just like freely just like kind of surrendered to God. I was like, God, I'm so done with this. And so suicide isn't something you choose to pick up. Depression isn't something you choose to pick up. Anxiety. And like maybe some people like have some different insight on that as far as like, okay, like you can choose to stay away from the situation. But for me, it was something that just came upon me. It was something that was like sent to take me out. It's like an assassin sent from Satan himself. And so every time I dealt with it, like I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know how to get over it. And so that moment that it was leading up to the point where I was like, all right, you know, done, you know, this is it. I'm done. I'm tired of dealing with this crap. I'm just going to kill myself. And so like I go to church and I just felt a weight just ripped out of me. I just felt so many different things taken from me from that situation. And even from that day on, I've almost questioned God's goodness. I'm like, God, is it going to sneak up on me? You know, and I tell her all the time, I know I say this more than once. I feel sad sometimes. I feel unhappy or whatever. I get mad, but it doesn't consume me. It doesn't consume me to the point where I'm like, all right, you know, Lord, I'm just
dark hole with
exactly. And so when I say I'm safeguarding my walk with God, I'm safeguarding my happiness. It's more like I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah.
And so like anything that I can do to prevent myself from putting myself in those situations, as far as being depressed, being unhappy, and that's drug use. Drug use is the hugest thing that contributes to those things. As far as the drugs we were using too, or I don't want to speak for her, but specifically for me, the drugs I was using were deteriorating the way I thought, deteriorating my decision making, deteriorating our relationship. And so
yeah, they mess with your mental balance, like the chemicals in your brain.
Absolutely.
They alter them.
Absolutely.
So they actually change who you are. But I think something I really admire about you, Caleb, is I think you have a really good ear for listening. Not just people, but for God specifically. I think you hear very clearly.
Thank you.
I don't know if you know that.
I don't.
From me and Lex, I know Lex is like that as well. She can hear very well. She's very easy to hear. And I feel like came across a lot of people that have that gift to be able to hear. Like, you're very easy person to talk to. Like, if I'm talking to you, I know you're listening.
Thank you.
I know for a fact, like, you're taking in what I'm saying. Your brain isn't anywhere else. You're not thinking about anything else when I'm talking to you. Right now, you're thinking about something else. Right?
She was laughing. So she's laughing because she doesn't believe I'm the best listener. And so I'm saying thank you, because it's good to hear that. Because, like I said, well, I don't know if I said this now or prior to, but we've been working on communicating. And I said, you guys set the best example. I don't know if y'all know that y'all are doing this. And when I'm watching y'all's podcast, I'm like, y'all are flowing, and I'm sure y'all talked about the things that you're going to talk about. But as far as like God is in the podcast with you guys, because sometimes you'll hear at the end of the podcast, like, wow, this was so good for me. Like, and I'm like, did y'all not talk about this like prior to? And so you can definitely see where God's intervening in y'all's conversations and talking, but y'all have set such a firm example for communication. And so
thank you.
Just this last week, I've been practicing with her. I'm like, like maybe I can like not get frustrated over this, and like maybe I can insert this type of thinking. Yeah. And so we're trying to create a space for each other, but yeah, she doesn't believe I'm good at communicating.
It doesn't come easy. Like, this didn't just happen. And I think like y'all hearing our podcast and even us talking to y'all personally, like where we've been with our communication, or just the ugly parts, like it didn't just come here, and we still have so much to grow in, like so much. And that's just, I think we're always going to be growing the older we get.
Right.
The seasons changing in our life. One day when we become parents, that'll be a whole other communication thing we'll have to learn. But I just think like the key is just overly communicating, creating a safe space for each other to talk, and just be vulnerable. Like, if you are having a thought towards something and you are feeling a certain way, talk about that. Yeah. No matter like what you think they're going to feel like, hey, and I'm like learning when is the best time to bring it up for him and how his brain is. Like, he's very more like, he's not like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, right here, right now. Like, I kind of have to set it up. Like,
not
hey,
confrontational.
Yeah, like I kind of have
like
to set
in situations like that, I am confrontational. But like, if we're in
he'll ask me like, is this a good
a time of like arguing or something? Like, I don't want to. If things are heated, I'm not about to talk about this. Like, we just need to chill. Let me think. You go think. I don't want to, like, bring in the emotions into this conversation. So I'm not confrontational in that kind of way.
Yeah, but if there's something like deep I want to talk about, I'm not just going to be like, hey, I used to just be like, hey, da 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 da, and he's just like, whoa. Like at first I'm like, hey.
It's Tuesday. You're bringing this up.
I just got home.
Like, I'm not going to come out, just throw up on him when he comes home from work. Like, there's a certain time and place you talk about things. Like, set it up. I feel like it just depends on how your brains are, how each other works. That's just something I'm learning. Like, hey, babe, like, I have something on my heart I really need to talk to you about. Like, literally last night, I'm not going to say exactly, whatever. I know we can, but I'm not even trying to remember. But I was just like, hey, like, oh, yeah, just like having more grace. Like, I feel like there could be a little bit more grace over, like, if I'm going through something. Because, like, sometimes, like, I like that you brought up that you're feeling sad, or you're feeling like you don't know why. Like, that happens to me a lot, where I'm like, I feel sad for no reason. My life is perfect. There's no reason why I should feel sad right now. But it doesn't get me in a hole. Yeah. So that's a protection, I feel like. But I told him, I was like, I feel like there'd just be a little bit more grace over, like, if I look like I'm overthinking on my face, like, don't just assume that I'm overthinking. Just know I'm in the middle of, like, processing something, instead of just going like, hey, like, don't overthink. Yeah. Instead of like that was me coming to him like, hey, instead of just be like, hey, stop overthinking, why don't you just ask me, are you overthinking? Be more sympathetic. That's and good. Just like be there for me. Like, that's what I need. I don't need somebody, because God put him in my life to help me, but like as a man, you want to just like fix things. You want to like, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Like,
yeah, every time you tell me something in my brain already automatically, I'm like, okay,
how can I fix
what can I say that would help this situation? But I understand what you're saying, and you've been saying it like you just need some empathy, pretty much. You just need to be sympathetic and pretty much just listen. Which that's why I'm saying I really admire how you
what they're
listen.
talking about?
No, I'm just saying, like, I think it's one thing to listen, and speaking in the sense of like listening to God. I think it's one thing to be able to hear from God, but I think it's another thing to be able to act on what he says.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's another thing that you do really well. Like when you said you were having that dream, automatically you're like, all right, who do I call? Like, I just need to do something about this. They said, go to this place, go to TBI.
Yeah.
You moved. You automatically did it. And I always see you like, and even in the young adults night, you had that moment where Kenneth called out, like he was feeling anxiety and depression in the room heavily. And you're like, that's me.
Before he said stand up, raise your hands, I was up.
You're moving.
There's something associated with that too, is like what people are going to think. Sometimes not everybody in the service is feeling what's being said. They're not present. They were there by accident. A friend invited them. That was for me. If it wasn't for nobody else, it was for me, and I was willing to accept it.
Yeah.
With TBI, I literally thought there was no option. I thought I was going to die. I was leaving her behind. I was willing to do whatever I had to do. And she, by the grace of God, I'm so glad she did, because if Kalisa wasn't here today, I would be dead. I would be lost. I would be gone. And this is a fact. You can phone my mom, and my mom says all the time, and I'm like, Mom, it wasn't that crazy. She's like, my mom says all the time, she's like, I thought you were going to end up in prison one day.
I don't think he remembers, like, he's allowed himself to block out a lot that has happened because it was easier for him to heal that way, which is fine,
your brains do that.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
This is true. I don't. There's a lot that I don't remember, and it's a choice, but also too, I use this, and this is for my favor. I use it in my favor. God says he throws your sin as far as the east is from the west. I do the same thing, like as far as like, because he forgets, it's no longer held accountable in the books. And so in my head, I'm like, I got a God-given power to forget. And it's a true ability to, to forget. It's a true power and ability to forget. Growing up, things weren't always so glorious, but I love my parents for who they were, what they did with what they had. Now, some of my other brothers, they can remember very vividly the things that they had, and they hold grudges against my parents. They're upset and they're hurt about it. But I'd rather choose not to remember it, because they say forgive and forget.
Right.
And if you truly forgive, you have to forget. And if you don't forget, you're holding on to that pain. You're holding on to unforgiveness, and that's poison from within. And so there's so many people that's done me wrong where I feel like, I just wanted to put my hands on them, or, I just like, the past Caleb just wanted to do something crazy outsane to them. And so I think the best way to let go of those things, because I encounter those people, I see those faces, they're family members, they're past friends or whatever. And so, I think God's given me the ability to forget. And sometimes we start thinking, talking about past stuff. I'm like, like, I don't live there no more. Like, and it's not like I don't want to approach it.
Yeah.
It's more like, I don't want to remember. God allowed me to forget that, and so let's leave it there.
Yeah. And there'll be the right time to share it, just like this, or somebody that comes across your path and is struggling in a certain way, and you're like, hey, like, I remember being that way. Like, there'll be a right time to share the things you've been through, but it's not something you have to carry on your on your sleeve. And I would have never known that you've like walked through that, because every time I see you, you just seem like you're on fire for God. You're on a mission for God. Yeah. You seem like you're happy and joyful. I would have never known that. I always see you with a smile on your face. Always. So to hear that you just go through something, you've been through something like that, and see you on the other side is very encouraging. But what did you, Kalisa, like during that time, like how were you during that time when he was going through that? Like, was it harder to not be like codependent? And, you know what I'm saying?
I just didn't really understand it. That is never a feeling like I've had within myself. So it was more like, snap out of it. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, and to knowing that he did have a trust in God and like a relationship with God, I was like, you're fine. Like, give it to God. And it's obviously way bigger than that. And he is so good at forgetting and forgiving. And that's, that's one of my hardest things to do, is I will hold on to something 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I will allow them to stack up. And so I truly do envy him. Like, I do want to be more forgiven or like more for whatever the word is.
More forgiving.
Yeah, more forgiving. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And so it was tough having to go through that. And then, I was also going through my own battles. So I felt like maybe he wasn't there for me through those things. And that was probably part of me like, okay, well, he's not here for me. I'm not going to be there for him, which it did not help our relationship at all. It was very toxic. But even still to this day, he's consistently putting in my mind, forgive, forgive, forgive. And that is one of my biggest things I'm going to be working on 2024. Miracle Week, that was my prayer every day for specific things, specific people. So yeah, it was tough.
There's freedom in forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I've been learning that. I have forgiven tattooed on my arm. And that's something I've been picking up this year alone. I was like, when you're living in unforgiveness, you're living in what someone's done to you, and you're carrying that with you, or allowing that deep, dark thought or that pain that they caused you to run around with you rent free. And it bags you down.
Wild.
Yeah.
I wish I could live that way.
It weighs you down in the sense of there's certain circumstances you'll keep yourself from. There's certain friend groups. There's certain what am I trying to say? Events, experiences. There's certain experiences you'll keep yourself away from if you walk around with this unforgiveness.
Right.
Because maybe you were in that circumstance 10 years ago where a youth pastor hurt you and you're like, I'm never going to be in youth again. And that was me. I've forgiven that youth pastor, and I'm allowed to place myself in a youth setting again. Just yesterday, I reached out to our youth pastor. I'm going to start serving in youth now. And I'm going to start like creating that open space for me on Wednesdays. I always say, I'm so busy, but you guys taught me to say, I'm so full. I'm so full. And, I can create that time. I am in the position of owning my own business. And so God has given me the ability to steward that as far as timing. So if that means I have a passion for youth and I want to serve in youth, and then I get asked to serve in youth, I'm like, oh no, I'm too busy. I can't partake in that. That's a lie. That's a lie coming from myself. That's a lie coming from Satan himself. And so I texted him yesterday. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a part of youth. Like I want to be a part of that, but I have church hurt from youth, and I don't even want to say it's partially from the way the youth pastor acted, partially. But it was a huge ordeal with my offense to the situation. I wasn't able to navigate those relationships or correction or guidance in a proper way to the point where I was like, you're right. When he was coming at me or saying things in my life, because growing up Pentecostal or growing up in a small church, people tend to be a lot more honest to each other. And so he's being super honest, and I hated him for it. And so I had to go through a forgiveness stage. At that point in life, I was a youth leader, and I was a young youth leader, 16, 17, and I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And he called me out for it, and it hurt almost to the point where I'm like, I don't want anything to do with another youth pastor. I don't want anything to do with church. I don't want anything to do with youth, let alone. And so, now I'm going to be a youth leader. And so, and that, sorry, excuse me. And that all involves forgiveness. If I wasn't able to forgive him, I never texted him personally, say, hey, I forgive you for the things that were said. Forgiveness comes from within, and it all always means you have to reach out to that person and say, hey, I forgive you. Yeah. No, you can take it to God and say, God, I forgive that person.
You're just letting yourself off the hook.
Yeah. That sounds good. And so,
I like the way that sounds.
And so the way that I operate is, if you can go to God with it, and you can forgive yourself for the way you felt, and forgive yourself for the way you reacted, and then forgive them for whatever they may have done, misguiding that relationship. And it doesn't always have to be with church. It can be with family and friends. Say someone hurts you, you need to forgive them. If not, the next time you go navigate a friendship or a relationship or going to a certain experience or something of the sort, you're going to go at it with restraints. You're going to go at it, and you're not going to fully apply yourself, fully put yourself into the situation where you're like, I want to receive. And so, forgiveness shackles you. Not forgiveness, unforgiveness shackles you to the extent of not wanting to do certain things.
Yeah. To tag along what you were saying, Kalisa, how you kind of like wish you had more of what he had, like the forgiveness part. That's the beautiful thing about having a partner. That's the beautiful thing, because I feel like you guys are really similar like us. I feel like me and you are kind of similar in like a chill way, and you guys are pretty similar in like an emotional way. You guys are high in emotion. Me and Kalisa were just like, I'm just trying to chill. But that's the beautiful thing about a relationship. Like knowing Lex and being married to her and living with her every single day, I've gotten to learn more of my emotional side through her. I've got to know, like, one of the things that I wanted to grow in is being more empathetic for people or myself or her and anything in general. So I'm able to see her traits. I'm able to see how she acts and how she treats people in life. And I'm able to pick off of her what she has the best of, and same vice versa for me and her, me and her. But that's just the beautiful thing about marriage or relationships.
Soon to be married.
Yeah, soon to be married. You guys are definitely going to be married. But
so
that's just the beautiful thing about a relationship. You guys can pick each other and see who's best at this and who's best at that, and learn from each other in that same way. Not like we said it last podcast, marriage is, I'm saying marriage, but I mean, a relationship, but marriage is the best slap in the face that you can get, because it's telling you what you're worst at and what you need to work on.
It's a constant mirror.
Mirror, yeah.
And just teaches you how to be humble and serve.
But I didn't shout you guys out. Well, tell me your business name again.
Southern Glass Installs.
Southern Glass Installs. So
if you need windows, hit him up, please.
Caleb has a window company that he does. So if there is anybody out here listening in the market, or know anybody in the market looking for windows, he is an entrepreneur and owns that business, which if you've listened to us for any amount of time, you know that we fully support entrepreneurship. We're about the creative, the outside thinker, and the believer. And I strongly still believe that we need more good people with money. We need more kingdom entrepreneurs. We need more people that are down to make a difference, that have money. I feel like there's too many people in the world that have money that don't really have good intentions.
This is true.
How did you get started with your business?
I didn't want to do it. This is like completely like a God thing in my life. I tell people all the time, I'm not here by my own qualifications. I'm not here by my own wit. There is people more qualified than me that are not doing as good as I am. And this is purely like my walk with God just blessing me with this. I have been around windows since I was about 16, 15-ish, my brother,
he was like looking out that way. Just been looking out windows.
I've definitely done like the service industry. Like when me and Kalisa met, I quit my job doing windows.
He did not want to be a part of windows at all anymore.
I hated it. And so it's so funny how God is such a funny character because he'll take something you hate and flip it into something that provides, something that you love, something that produces fruit. And I always say windows isn't glorious. What I do isn't glorious. Waking up at 4:30, 5 a.m. in the morning and going to physically throwing my body at something. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, how is this going to get done? And no, it's not glorious, but I got into it at a young age, just helping on job sites, cleaning windows and picking up trash. At the point that I met Kalisa, which was like maybe 3 or 4 years after I've been in the window business, I quit. I moved to Arlington, which was an hour away from my hometown, and I started working as a bar back at Boomer Jacks. This is no shout out. Boomer Jacks is not my spot.
No sponsorship here.
No sponsorship. Cut that out. So I worked there from 5 o'clock to 2 in the morning, and then I hated it. Tough shift. It was a very tough shift, and so eventually, I transitioned from being in the service industry to being back into Windows, being in the service industry, back to Windows. And eventually, once we started applying God to our life, I was allowed to see things differently. I was allowed to get underneath some guys that I can respect that were in the window business, that were applying themselves. Now, they're not men of God, but they had certain attributes that a man can respect. They were real hard workers. They were real kind and thoughtful as far as with their employees. And so
it's honorable men.
Honorable men. Yeah, exactly. And not all honorable men are found in the church. You might find a couple in the world that you're like, absolutely, you need God. Yeah, if you had God, I can only imagine what the kingdom of God would be like, because everybody has their own reach. We all have our own, our crowd, our own environment that we can reach. And I always say, like, if I get saved, I can help my friends get saved. And if you get saved, you can help your friends get saved. And we don't have the same friends. And so we all have reach. And so, they're honorable men. Back to like how we got into Windows is I started working for them and we were getting into church. I started tithing on my money. I started, faithfully tithing. And God just did certain things for me. Like I wasn't asking, I wasn't like, God, I want to make more money. I wasn't saying, God, I want to own my own business. It was, we were just being dedicated and intentional with God. God just started blessing me. And so I ended up stopped working for them guys and ended up going back to work for my brother, which was like in my head was like not a good decision because when I was younger, we would always butt heads and, start cussing at each other on a job. And so it's like, I was really scared of going back to working for him because I'm like, God, I got something good going. And so I applied myself to that situation right there. I worked underneath my brother and ran his window crews, which was a huge thing for me to run a crew, drive a truck and pull a 17-foot trailer behind me. It was like something that when you look at me and you see the way that I'm dressed outside of work, you're like, you don't do that. Not a lot of people would peg me as someone that doesn't do what I do, but God definitely just slowly but surely through discipline and through the consistency of waking up every day. When I got that position to work over people, I was in a men's group and we were reading John Bevere's book, Killing Kryptonite. And that book has allowed me, and being around that group of men allowed me to realize how I want my relationship with men to be. And it allowed me to take things from certain men and be a leader in my own life. And I was so fearful of being over a group of men, as in like, these guys are going to have to look up to me. I'm young. I don't know nothing about nothing. Like this is a complete favorable, position. God favored me to be here. And so I went into there, praying and asking them guys like for advice and stuff. And so when I first started off running that truck and trailer, it wasn't mine. None of it was mine. I was just an employee put in a position to lead. And so, I prayed about it. I went in there praying about it. I'm like, God, I know these men aren't, men of God, and I know they're not looking after your heart, but God, use me in a way that they would understand. Use me in a way that they're receptive to who I am and what I'm trying to do. And so I went through a year of working underneath my brother, and I just seen an opportunity. He was about to give up a couple of contracts, and I was like, absolutely. And I was like, I want to work for them people. And he's like, well, do it. Get your license, get your LLC. And it all sounds simple as you say it, but it was not simple at all. None of it was simple.
And it was very scary for you too.
Very scary.
I imagine so.
At the beginning, the trust was not fully there. But now seeing like he's about to hit 1 year of having his own LLC, just seeing him, the business truly like receiving God's glory and the blessings that have come out of it, I think that will allow him to keep moving and the fears are no longer there. They were so strong at the beginning, but blessing after blessing. And it's super encouraging too, because before going into the windows again, he was so against it. And but it was at a point in our life like, okay, we can't serve forever, like serve tables, like, we have to make a career. And it was super scary and challenging.
She was definitely applying the pressure. It was like she wanted me to be a provider. And I always I think every man, their desire down beneath is they want to provide.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's deep in us. It's our nature.
It would be amazing if she didn't have to work another day of her life, And so in my head, we don't have kids. We're not married. And so in my head, I'm like, how can I be enough now? So then I'll be more, because you can't be more until you try now. You know what I mean?
Right,
so you have to apply yourself in certain areas. And so it gives me a certain type of peace of knowing that one day I can take care of my family. One day, God is starting things now that aren't yet finished. And so all year long, every reason, all throughout the year, there's been like 100 reasons to quit and give up. There's been times where money wasn't coming in and I was like almost fearful to the point of, I'm like, God, like this isn't working. Like, and a lot of people said like, hey, if you make it through your first year of the window business, you'll be set. And I'm like, I don't feel like I'm gonna make it through the first 6 months. It was pretty scary. And, around that time, she just kept asking me like, what do you want to do? And like, I like talking to people. So I was like, barber school. Like, I want to go to barber school. I don't know how to cut hair.
That was so far-fetched for him too.
I was reaching. I was truly reaching as far as like what I was willing to do. I was just wanting to put myself in a position of knowing we were going to be okay.
Right.
Something consistent, something, and Windows was never consistent for me. Money's never consistent in Windows. And so I've been blessed to the point that God has made sure it's consistent. My bills are paid. We are taken care of. Through all of that though, my biggest advice is become a tither, become a giver. Don't hang on to every penny that you have. I've seen a lot of money come into my bank account, and I've seen a lot of money go out, and just as easy as it goes out, it comes back in. And so I just give that to God. I give that 10% to God, and then I give a little bit extra because I'm like, hey, God, here's the cherry on the top. And so through giving, I have so much peace when there's not work. Oh. Through giving, I have so much peace when things aren't looking the way that they should. I always remind myself, I'm like, God put me here. God wouldn't put me here to leave me out to dry. God wouldn't put me here to, make a joke out of me. God's not like putting you in a situation, then turning around and be like, ha ha, right. I got you. God wants good for us. And so like, if that's a business, I think at the beginning of the business, I would always say, I think before the business came about, I said, I want God to make me a kingdom giving builder. I can't word that right, but
I got you. Yeah.
Be able to give into the kingdom to the point where it'll make a difference.
For sure.
And so he's done that. And so I think before this podcast, I was telling you, I was looking at my receipts from giving this year, and God's doubled my giving. And so I'm like, that's a testimony right there. Like,
wow.
It goes to show right there. Like, just hearing y'all's story. I mean, I think everybody has a story. I mean, some people say like, oh, I don't really have like a testimony to share. I haven't really gone through anything, but everybody's experienced some type of pain. Yeah. Everybody's experienced some type of hardship or whatever the case may be. But there's just no pain that is ever purposeless. There's no pain that has no purpose in your life. Like, whatever you go through, even like right now, we were talking about earlier, like things were a little tough. Like, there's going to be a purpose for something that's happening that's hard in your life. Like, later down the road, you're going to see like, oh, I know why I was getting stretched in that area. Yeah. I know why I was getting stretched in that area, because now I've expanded, and now I have the capacity to hold these kind of limits because I was stretched in that area back then. And a lot of people ask, like, people that don't really understand maybe the faith or the Christian walk, why do bad things happen to good people? And I would say that to everybody that asks that. There is no pain that's purposeless. Yeah. Every single thing that you go through has a purpose. That's good. You can't see it as like, oh, like I'm just going through something and my life sucks. Like, there's just, then that's it. And everything has a purpose. Everything that you go through has a purpose. And I could say the same thing through us. Like, we've gone through crazy stories like you guys have, like drugs, weed, partying, living in the world, all like that. And we've experienced the depression of what that brings in, and just all of the bad stuff that it involves. And it's painful. And it's painful to go through that stuff, especially to get out of it and walk through that and, openly admit that we were wrong. Openly admit that we were walking in the wrong way. Like, that is painful. It's painful to face the things that you've done for so many years have consequences. It's painful to do that. But on the outcome of it now, we're living in this walk that we live in, and now we see like that pain had a purpose.
It's rewarding.
It's so
now.
rewarding.
Yeah.
Now it's so rewarding. Now we get to live in what we went through.
I want to speak to y'all's pain and y'all's purpose, as in y'all had y'all's pain, but y'all's purpose is relationships like us. I receive so much from you guys as far as y'all's walk, where y'all are at. It's so inspiring because I've heard y'all in an episode say before, throughout your house, y'all had holes in the wall, broken doors. And I'm laughing because it's not funny.
It's not.
I'm laughing and I'm like, oh my gosh, we relate, and so to think that we had something in us so deep and demonic to the point that I'm tearing down doors. God forbid, and that's a vulnerable thing to say, to put yourself out there, and you guys make yourself vulnerable. And there's relationships that are so afraid to speak on that. We don't go to church talking about that. Yeah. We don't go to church saying like, oh, well, yeah, we used to be crazy. No, it's more like it's something you safeguard. But once someone speaks on it, you're like, like I've been through that, and I appreciate them for talking about it, because if y'all never talked about the things you've gone through, people are like, oh my gosh, these people are perfect. These people, and people would judge y'all from that standpoint of not knowing what y'all went through. And that relates back to going to TBI and seeing everybody being happy. I don't know what any of them gone through. I never asked them. I don't know if they came from a nice home, a terrible home, and they're just happy and standing on business because what they came out of. And so I appreciate you guys for that.
Thank you.
Pain and purpose.
And I was getting reminded of what you were saying earlier, that when you're forgiving, there's like the attachment of forgetting. And like that's the same thing as with God. Like when he forgives us, he forgets it. Like he doesn't hold on to it. He's not like, there's not like a bucket of all of like our sin and all of our mistakes in this bucket that he's waiting to show you. Like, no, once you ask God to forgive you, he literally forgets it, make you completely new.
Clean.
You're brand new. You're like white as snow. You are a new creation in Christ. And like we literally feel that. Like literally.
It's visible. It's visible.
Like I can even get a little personal at this. I just felt my heart to say this, but even like with the sexual immorality in our lives and the mistakes that we made, you know, before we met each other, even when we were doing the 2-year long distance relationship and was with other people during our 2-year long relationship. And then me moving here, coming back to be with him, then finding out all this other stuff that we didn't tell each other that involves
a lot of pain.
Sexual immorality. And then you're trying to go into a godly marriage, living together, not married yet, and experiencing sex and doing all this stuff. Can you imagine just the like
clash? It was just a clash.
Oh my gosh, it was just like, it was awful. But the moment that we got poured into our lives, like people pouring into our lives and telling us like, that is a gift from God for marriage. It literally like, I think it was a month before we got married, we decided to not do anything. And God really restored that. And when we got married, then now we really see why that's a gift from God.
The pain had purpose.
And now when I tell you about the forgetting, like none of that is in the midst of our relationship.
That's good.
We used to like see each other with other people because we had that in our heads.
Yeah.
Like you already been with somebody. And like that was in the midst of our, you know, relationship. We don't even experience, like we don't even have those thoughts. Like there's no room for the enemy to use that against us.
We've shut all doors now that we faced it. We went through the pain of facing that. And that's what I was saying, like the painful walk of going through all of the consequences that, you know, you've kind of added up. We've faced that head on. And that's why we're able to walk in so much freedom now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to talk about, but I just felt like on my heart to say that for anybody listening to, like, it just reminded me of that because that's a testimony for us. Like, I don't see him anymore. He doesn't even see me. It's not a thing. Like, it's forgotten.
Yeah.
I don't even think about that about myself anymore. I used to not be able to look at myself in the mirror because then I would see nothing but like other people, my mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that like all my mistakes. And it's like, I don't see, like God has completely restored the way I view myself, the way I view him, the way I view our marriage. Like it's such a gift from God. It's so heavenly. Like it's so like out of there. Like when the Holy Spirit's involved in every detail of your marriage, it's crazy.
Yeah, we speak so openly about things like these, things about like this, because we want to share with people that walk through the same thing.
Absolutely.
And if I hear something like that, if I hear something that somebody has experienced that I experienced, but I don't want to talk about it, it lets me know that I'm not alone. It lets me know like other people have walked through this. So if someone else is on the other side of it, I can definitely be.
A lot of people are suffering in silence.
Yeah.
A lot of people are too afraid to put themselves out there. And I'd like to say I have a experience with that. That'd be like today. I was afraid to put myself out there on this podcast. I was afraid to get on here and just talk, you know.
Well, you're doing great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate
Both
it.
you guys are doing great.
But yeah, so ultimately, like I was scared to come today onto the podcast and like just get to talking about things that I've gone through and put myself out there. I have a list. Some people are like, oh my gosh, like make fun of the way I talk.
would have never noticed.
You don't have a list.
I've done such a good job throughout the years of like kind of washing out the strongness of it. But, you know, like I think some people are afraid of what they're going through and speaking of it. And some people are just waiting for someone to say something.
Yeah.
Some people are just waiting for you to speak about it. And like once you do, they're like, oh my gosh, like, and just start opening up with you. And so I think that's like the beauty in this podcast is like there's so many different topics that you're going to end up talking about that are going to touch thousands of people. I know, like, I don't know y'all's numbers. I don't know where y'all's numbers are at. But as listening, like, throughout this week, I'm like, one day, like, there's going to be, like, in the Christian community, even outside of the Christian community, there's going to be a large following to hear what's being said. And so I'm glad to be a part of it.
Appreciate that.
That's what this is about for sure. It's about others. And
Yeah.
we love this. Like, we're in a season of investing in our, like that you said that earlier, we're trying to, we want to invest more of our friendships.
Be
and
more
stuff.
intentional.
Yeah, so like that's what this is.
Yeah.
Like we want this more. We want, even with people that we don't really know, like we'll have to go hang out with them first and like get a feel of it and see if we have like that chemistry, and then for sure. But we're just so excited to see all the people that are going to come across this podcast and be a part and get to share their story and stuff. And I'm just so honored that y'all are the second people on here.
I think being on this podcast, we kind of touched before we got on here, honestly, just doing this, hearing y'all's side of the story, hearing even Caleb be able to open up more maybe in areas that I've kind of shut him off in, is like, it's feeling very freeing right now. And and allowing me to see a different perspective where I can be more open and just more true to myself and true to our relationship and true to our friends. And
That's good.
a lot of times I hide so many things. We didn't touch so many different, things. But I kind of feel very okay to do so now.
Yeah. We're going to have part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. We're absolutely, definitely going to have you guys here again. I think this conversation went better than I could have ever expected.
Absolutely.
I think this was a great conversation. I think when was the last time that we hung out? It's been a while, no?
We were here. You made white bean chili.
Right.
So good.
I'd like to say, though, friendships are like investments. 100%. When I first met you guys, Kalisa and I, we were both drawn to you guys. And when I'm drawn to someone,
Like, we really wanted y'all to be our friends.
I try not to overdo it, though. You don't want to be like, oh, that's the cool kid, and I want to be friends with the cool kid. You're just like
Weird.
so annoying and weird and stuff. And so like I try to do cool, subtle things. And so like when we first met, I was like, I bought Brandon Lake concert tickets.
Awesome.
I bought 4 of them. And God didn't have you guys on my mind. God didn't have anybody specific on my mind. But when I went and bought them, God was like, buy 2 more. What more fun it would be, And so through that next week or so, I just was praying.
We both actually, when we came down to like,
It was y'all.
Wow.
Yeah,
we both had y'all in
absolutely.
mind.
I was like,
awesome.
She was like, I love Alexus, and I was like, and I love Jonathan. Like, let's do it. And so I don't even think we really knew each other as much as we may know each other now, but that was an investment. That was something that in my heart, I was praying for friends, and I was praying for healthy relationships and role models. And so I was like, God, how do I do this? Like you can't go about making friends in a positive manner the same way that you did outside of that. And so prior to building a friendship was like, hey, I got some weed. You want to smoke?
Yeah, for real. That was the way.
Building a friendship was like, hey, we're going to this super cool club out in downtown Dallas. Like, do you want to go? That was building our friendship. And so I think God just kind of put it on my heart. Like, I really wanted to go to that concert. And I'm like, oh, someone else might too, And like, so I was like, let's get that ticket. And whoever we can bring, like, it would be a blessing to them and it would be a blessing to us. And it's been so much more of a blessing to us because we're sitting here today. That was an investment into a relationship that I would do it like 10 times over.
Wow.
So.
Let's do it again.
let's do it.
So much fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, and he has new music. Let's do it.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. I know you guys still have a very busy day to go to.
Full
day.
I think I'd stay here for 3 hours and just miss our whole day.
If we could record for that long, I really would love to, but unfortunately our equipment doesn't last that long. It's about an hour's like the cutoff, but we'll upgrade again and we'll have 10-hour talks.
And to be like Joe Rogan's,
Rogan.
2 hours long.
But thank you guys so much. We love you guys.
We love y'all so much.
You guys have so many good things in y'all's future for a relationship and individually.
Absolutely.
We see it on both you guys. You guys are great people, have great hearts, good head on y'all's shoulders, and sky's the limit for you guys.
Literally,
Thank
sky is the limit.
That was beautiful.
Amen.
Thanks for saying that.
We love you guys, and thank you all you guys for listening. If you're still watching or listening, thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time. Until then, see things from a higher view. Peace out.
Peace out.